recording has started. If you were working on the challenge and you finished the challenge, go ahead and just join us today because we'll be doing a Pong game. And at any point during the Pong game that you kind of know what's going on, move forward. You know, if you know how to get the paddle to work, go for it. And then you'll always, if you get super lost and just don't know what's going on, well, you'll have the recording, you know, because the class will be following the recording, that you can fall back on and get kind of caught up from that. But you can kind of add on these additional challenges. How could I make the ball go faster? You know, this ball, I've got it bouncing now, just like the class. How can I make it go faster? What kind of mods could I add? What could I do with the score? Etc., etc. All right, if you did not finish the challenge, you can go ahead and finish the challenge today. Now, if you didn't start the challenge, if you were with me on Monday, that's great. That's wonderful. We're going to continue with the Pong game, and we're happy to go at that speed. I think everybody said that the speed was pretty good on Monday, so we're going to continue kind of with that speed in mind. Lots of these questions up here. All right. So go ahead, open Scratch, and you're going to need a new window, or I'm sorry, a new file, so file new. I'm going to go ahead and save. You always want to save your work, so file, save. Make sure you do that. Of course, you all do not have a file to save currently, but I'm going to practice what I preach and save that. Okay. For now, let me open a new file. And I give people kind of a moment to catch up here. Raise your hand if you need a moment to open a new Scratch file. All right, no worries. Take your time. As you open that, I am going to show you all something that one of your classmates did. And let's see, burning up. So let's see, who did this? Give me a moment, I have to look it up on Edmodo. Oh man, okay, lab was canceled. Looks like for good reason. Looks like you guys are getting some snow. I am about 2 hours south of Birmingham, and Birmingham's getting a lot of snow, so I know a lot of the students at my school are a little disappointed. They're not gonna, get a lot of snow, but they're gonna get enough. Okay, let's see. Gwen, we'll definitely check out your game in a little bit. Looks like you're not with us this evening. Rachel's not with us this evening, but she made this game, so we're going to show it. And I guess I'm just going to hit play and see what happens. So,
avoid the crazy sun. Press the arrow keys to move.
Oh, how cool! Really neat. Oh, looks like we're done. And it's timing us. Oh no! I love this. Very cool. Definitely, if you ever have something to show us in class, definitely do. And Gwen will check yours out if we have a little bit of time at the end. All right, so I'm going to put your hands down. You should have a new Scratch file open, and we're going to be making a Pong game today. So as a reminder on how this works, I'm going to say eyes on my screen, and I want you guys to pull your attention to my screen, and I'll show you what I want, and then when I say you try it, you're going to go to your own computers and try it out. Eyes on my screen, I want you to right-click and delete Scratch Cap. Go ahead and do that. Hey Pearl, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. How do you delete? You just gotta right click and delete it. Select delete. If you haven't been here for a little while, as in a few classes, you're definitely going to have to go back and check out the recordings. I can't go back through kind of opening Scratch or downloading it on your laptop, just because, it's been a few classes, right? So you're absolutely not in trouble. You're welcome, and I please welcome you to stay with us and kind of watch as we do Scratch, but we're not going to be able to kind of go back to that. There's definitely plenty of those recorded webinars for you to watch and then kind of figure out what we're doing. But this is Scratch 1.4. It's the little cat icon. If you have your Raspberry Pi open, looks like this. You double click it, and this is what opens. But you are going to have a little bit of a hard time keeping up with class. I still very much highly recommend you to stay and watch with us, but okay, so eyes on my screen, we're going to add a new sprite from file. If you look, it's a little folder with a star coming out of it. And I want you to add, this is going to be the ball for Pong, so I want you to either add the baseball, the basketball, or the beach ball. I know some of you like to add kind of more of the funkier looking shapes. I really want you to choose from one of these three. I'm going to choose beach ball. I'm going to rename this sprite ball. Go ahead and try that. All right, can anyone type in an answer why I really think it's so important for you to rename this sprite ball? It was originally Sprite 1. Why is it so important? Someone said to make it easier to code. Yeah, but can I get a little bit more specific there? Okay, it says, so it's easier to identify. Right. So I'm going to go with that one. It's easier to identify because in the code, yeah, tell apart from the other sprites, within the actual code, within the blocks of code that you're kind of stacking together, you're going to have to choose by its name, by its text name. You're not going to see a picture from the drop-down list. For example, this sensing block says if it's touching. Now, normally this would have all of the different sprite names on it. And if it was Sprite 1, Sprite 2, Sprite 3, Sprite 4, that's going to get hard to keep track of. But if it says ball, paddle, lava, you're more likely to remember what each one was in the function. So great answers to those. All right, so eyes on my screen, we're going to add a new sprite by painting. So we're going to paint new sprite. And that looks like the star and the paintbrush. So eyes on my screen, you are going to add a paddle. I'm using the rectangle tool. Just going to draw that here. And I want to point something out to you. If you see here, set costume center. If you click that, notice that there's this crosshairs that points to the center of your shape, and it should be pretty accurate to begin with. And I'll hit OK. What that's doing is it's specifying the center of your sprite. So you guys should not be making your paddle right now. You should be looking at me or mine. When you use a block like go-to, right? If you use go-to 0, 0, it'll bring your sprite to the middle of the screen, right? So if I click that, what it's doing is it's taking that pixel that we designated from the crosshairs. Right? It's taking that point, that center of the crosshairs, and bringing that to 0, 0. So it's okay if you have this big, bulky shape. Whatever you designate to be the center of the shape, that's what goes to 0, 0. And I know that's a detailed part of it, but I want to make sure that you show that. Typically, it's pretty good at setting Costume Center on its own, but just be aware of that as you resize things, especially in Scratch 2.0. If you resize it and don't reset the Costume Center, you're going to end up with some issues. It's not going to act like how you think it should. Okay, so now it's your time to try it out. Go ahead and on your screen, click Paint New Sprite. And then using the rectangle tool, paint a little rectangle. Hey Laura, just try to catch up the best you can, okay? I definitely empathize. So once you have painted your paddle, you're going to name it Paddle. So Laura, as people are catching up, we added a new sprite from the folder, and we added it from the category Things. When you double click Things, you see baseball, basketball, beach ball. You could choose any of these three. And then we painted a rectangle, and that's our paddle sprite. All right. Now, our paddle code is going to be really similar to the code we gave Scratch Cat in that sun game, the game where Scratch Cat got chased by the sun. What you do, you have, so eyes on my screen, I'm going to show you the blocks that you'll need, and then you are going to actually be the ones that code it. So you'll need the when green flag is clicked block. You'll need 2 if statements that check conditions. And the conditions that you're going to be checking are if a key is being pressed. If that key is being pressed, you're either going to move 10 steps, or if another key is being pressed, you're going to move negative 10 steps. So using these hints, and I actually left out 2 very important blocks that maybe you can try to remember. Using these, try to set up your paddle. So go ahead, you try it. Grace is absolutely on fire. She says, you need the forever loop block. Grace, great catch. And for those of you, we'll explain why in just a moment. Alright, so here's what happens. If the right arrow key is being pressed, you want to move 10 steps. Now what I'm going to do, which is a little bit faster than pulling all those blocks out, I'm just going to right click and duplicate that whole section of blocks and switch to the left arrow key from the drop down and move negative 10 steps. So now I can hook these together, and the issue gets to be if I say when the green flag is clicked, if, and then have my two if statements without the forever loop, the computer is only going to check once for each, and it's going to check them within 1 second. So as soon as the user presses this, unless they're holding down those arrow keys, nothing's going to happen. You need it to check multiple times. So this is actually, when you put it in the forever loop, now the computer is going to actually check a few times a second. And that should be how your paddle moves. It's now checking constantly. It's going to forever be stuck in this loop where these two if statements keep getting repeated. And that's how we get paddle movement. Now that other block I was talking about that you need, that is going to be your go-to block, and that's called an initial condition. We don't want this repeated. We only want it to happen right when that green flag is clicked. We want it to go to the center of the screen. So we want it to go to 0, maybe negative 120 or so. So now when the green flag is clicked, the paddle goes to the center of the screen every time. Even if I end up all the way over here, every time we kind of start that new game, it bounces back. All right, raise your hand if you need a minute to put together the paddle script. If not, we'll move on. No hands? Great. We'll keep going. So we're going to switch to the ball sprite. And this is going to be very, very similar to how the sun moved in the last game. So again, eyes on my screen. I'll show you the blocks that you might need, and then you'll piece them together on your screen. So you'll need instead of the if green flag clicked hat block, instead of this one, we're going to use the when the space key pressed. So that way you're going to be able to reset the game. And there are some initial conditions that you'll need. The first is that you want it pointed in 90 degrees. You want it pointed to the right. The second is then you're going to want it turned 15 degrees. And the reason is if you start with it pointed 90 degrees, if you remember from the webinar, as it travels across kind of horizontally and hits the wall, it's going to just bounce straight back and forth in this horizontal line. So you're going to want it started pointing 90 directions because you want it started pointing in the same direction kind of every time. But you want it to turn so that it's a little bit slanted, so that way, up here, that's how the ball is pointed, so that way it kind of bounces nicely. And the last thing is you want a go-to block so that it starts at the center every time, so it starts at 0, 0. So even if you reset the game, it's going to start at the center of the screen pointing in the same direction. These three blocks together are called your initial conditions. You do not want them in the forever loop. You want these initial conditions to only happen once at the start of the game. Eyes on my screen still, you're going to need a forever loop after that. And this forever loop is going to have two motion blocks in it. It's first, for every iteration, or every time the sequence of blocks within the forever loop is run, you're going to want it to first check to see if the ball has hit the edge, has hit the wall. If so, you want it to reverse direction. And then it's going to move 10 steps. If it is not touching the wall, it will simply move to the move 10 steps. All right, so using this and what we learned from Monday, go ahead and try to put together the code so far. Get your bouncing ball. All right, so what you should do, your initial conditions should happen as soon as the sequence is prompted. So this is going to happen every time the space key is pressed. The ball will go to the center of the screen, will face the right direction, and they'll get turned a little bit. It won't move. It doesn't move until you get into the forever loop. This forever loop is going to get repeated a few times every second. And what it's going to do is it's going to check to see if the ball is touching the edge. If the ball is not touching the edge, it's just going to move forward. If the ball is touching the edge, it's going to reverse directions, and then it's going to move forward. Every time this forever loop goes, the ball moves forward. It's just going to reverse directions before it moves forward if it's touching the wall. So we can press the space bar and see what happens. And we have a nice bouncing ball. Yeah, Kate, that would be a good code. Kate had a suggestion for more advanced Scratch users. You could end up, though, Kate, if you let it choose any direction from 1 to 360, it could end up getting stuck bouncing against the wall. You would want it to only bounce away from the wall. Okay. So notice that when the ball touches the paddle, nothing happens. That's because we haven't coded anything to happen yet. So take a look at these blocks down here. Eyes should be on my screen. What we want to happen, so notice that when if the ball is touching the edge of the screen, it just changes direction. It doesn't move. And we're going to do the same thing for when the ball touches the paddle, because every time you move through the forever loop, the ball moves. But you just want to be making sure that it's facing the right direction when it moves. In that case, if it touches the wall, you want it to face the other direction. If it touches the paddle, we want it to face upwards, somewhere upwards. So what we're going to do is have it point upwards, which is the 0 direction, point up if it hits the paddle, and then rotate 15 degrees. And we're going to add a random element in a little bit. So if it's touching the paddle, point in direction 0, point straight up, and turn a little bit. Paddle, we want it to start going back up, right? Like bouncing off the paddle. So point in direction up, turn 15 degrees, and then it would move 10 steps. So go ahead and add that to your code. And now it interacts with our beautiful paddle. All right. We're about halfway through class now. I'm going to do a quick poll just to make sure to see how everybody's doing. I really would appreciate if everyone answered. If you type in or you select the launch poll, I want to know how the pacing is going today. Am I going too fast? Or am I going at good speed? So please, everybody respond. Okay, everyone responded. Awesome. And what we got was about half of the group, actually exactly half the group said great, good pace. And then a portion said too fast and a portion said too slow. So I'm probably going to go around the same speed, a little bit slower. And then if you are flying through this, like you're not having any trouble, think about ways that you could make the game harder. For example, how could you make the ball go faster? Well, you could make the ball go 15 steps. Try some different stuff out. There's a really cool thing called slider. So instead of moving 15 steps, the user could actually change how fast the ball is going using what's called slider. So you click the little checkbox. Where's my slider? Oh, I think this is not the same thing that it is in Scratch 2.0. I apologize. We're not going to be able to do that. I think that's what physical computing is what it's referring to. But just try out different things in the blocks if you we're doing the challenge Monday and you know how to make the Pong game. I'm actually going to probably be going a little bit slower, just a tad. So give everybody a moment to catch up here. Yeah. Kate makes the suggestion to add a game over text to the bottom. We're about to add the losing and the winning elements. We're about to do that in class. So right now, the game works, but it's not super exciting, right? You can't win, you can't lose. What we're going to do is add a score. So eyes on my screen, under variables, we're going to make a variable, and we're going to call that variable score. Notice I clicked variables, and I hit this top button, make a variable. There's nothing listed here at first, so I make a variable, call it score for all sprites, and then a whole bunch of options show. By clicking this checkbox on or off, score gets displayed on the stage. So when the space key is pressed, we want score set to 0. And at some point in the game, we want the score to change by 1. I want you guys to think about where we could add this so when the ball touches the paddle, we get 1 added to our score. Change score by 1 means add 1 to the score. Change score by -1 would take 1 away from the score. So I'll give you guys a minute to catch up and try to decide where you're going to put this block. Grace, again, has a suggestion. She says you're going to put it inside the if kind of C, and that's true. Notice that you have to set the score to 0 every time space key is pressed because you want the score to reset. So go ahead, play your game for a minute. And my score is 1 right now. It's 2, and if I hit space bar, it's not going to reset, but when we add the losing element, it will. And when I hit stop and hit space bar, it does reset again. All right, so we're going to add, as on my screen, we're going to add a sprite. We're going to paint a new sprite. And this is going to be our lava sprite. So I'm going to use the rectangle tool. If you guys are kind of, you know, really getting this, you can absolutely paint a more elaborate sprite. But for me, I'm just doing a, I'm just doing a red rectangle, and I'm going to make it really long. And when I set costume center, it's right about center, and that's what I want. Okay? And it's just this red rectangle, but it's not wide enough. So there's actually something I can do about that. So go ahead and make the sprite, call it lava. And once you caught up, I'll show you what you can do about that. So I want this lava to spread out completely across the bottom of my game. Okay, so if you made your lava too small, you could go into costumes and re-edit it, or you could go into your looks block and change, you could set the size to be, let's say, 200%, so twice as big. And now my lava is bigger, and I can place at the bottom of the screen. And I just click and drag it down to the bottom of the screen. I'm actually not going to code for the lava at all, but one of my more experienced Scratch users in the last class made a suggestion that once your score starts to rise, you have your lava start to rise as well, which could be really cool. So if you guys want an extra challenge, maybe start thinking about how you would do that. Give your user, you know, move up the paddle and move up the lava. All right. So we're not actually, you know, notice that I did name this lava, but we're not actually going to put any code in it for right now. We're going to put the code in the ball section, and what we want to have happen is if the ball touches the lava, we want to stop just this script. We don't want to stop all because that stops the entire game. We just want to stop this script. We want it to break out of the forever loop so that way the user can hit spacebar and play again. So if, go ahead and try it on your screen, if touching lava, stop script. And you want this to actually go before if touching paddle. This is super important, right? It's the end of the game, so it should be your first thing that gets checked for. All right, and now we have a pretty good game, right? You have a score, you have a ball and a paddle, and you have a way to lose. I'm going to show you a couple more elements. I'm going to show you what Kate was talking about, how to add over some text if you lose or win. And then I think for the rest of the class that you guys should just be able to experiment with your game. Change the backgrounds, change the sprites, etc. So for right now, eyes on my screen. I'm going to make a new sprite. And it's going to be text. And the text is just going to say, I don't know why the text is down there. Let me pull it up by that little black thing there. You're a winner. Alright, I'm painting a whole new, this is a whole new sprite, okay? And if I hit set costume center, should be around that A there. Okay. So now I have a new sprite called Sprite 1. I'm going to change it to text. And I'm going to go ahead and let you guys catch up. So add a new sprite, paint a new sprite, and use the text tool. So you hit T for text. It's going to have this black dot and this kind of writing prompt. You can click and drag that black dot so it's higher on your screen and type out, "You're a winner." And then when you hit set costume center, you're going to click and drag to the center of that A and hit OK. You're going to name it text. And again, I know some of you were saying I was moving a little bit too fast, but do know that you're going to have the recorded version as well. So if you get stuck on one part, or just super confused, or you want to go through something again, you have the opportunity to look at the recording, hit pause, and kind of go at your own speed. Alright, eyes on my screen. And if you are feeling like you're really falling behind, I wouldn't worry about the text sprite right now. I would worry about the rest of your game. And again, you could watch the recording to see how I did the text sprite at another point. Under costumes for the text sprite, I'm going to paint a new costume. And I'm going to again use the text tool. And this time I'm going to say, "You lost." So now this text tool, again, I'm going to set the costume center, has two costumes, one that says you're a winner and one that says you lost. The last costume is going to say, press spacebar to play again. I'm going to set that costume center, and it's okay if you're not caught up on all the different text. I want you to kind of watch what I'm doing right now. And again, you can watch the recording if need be, but seeing how I code this is going to be more important. So you can add the costumes later. I mean, once you understand how to add a text costume, it's not too hard, right? I'm in the Costumes tab, and I'm painting a new costume. But eyes on my screen for a second, because this is really cool. So when the green flag is clicked, or when the space key is pressed, we don't want the user to see this. So we're going to hide, and that's that purple look block. We're going to hide this from the user when those two things happen. So when the game starts and the game's being played, the user can't see the text, no matter what costume it is, whether it says you're a winner, or you lost, or press spacebar to play again. But now let's go back to our ball script for a second. And I know I'm going really fast. So I'm going to have this so that you can watch it in the recording. This is definitely an optional part of the game, but I want you guys paying attention to my screen for a second so that you see this nifty thing I'm about to add. There's something called a broadcast, and it's a way that sprites can communicate to each other. It's not like this looks block that says say hello. It's not a way to communicate to your user or your player. It's a way for sprites to communicate to each other. So broadcasts is found under control, and I can create a new broadcast called 1. And I can broadcast it, or I'm actually going to do lost. A new broadcast called lost, because we have a really easy lost one, right? So before you stop the script, if it's touching the lava, broadcast out lost. Okay, and we have still 12 minutes left, so I'm going to go over this again in just a minute, and you guys can follow along. But then text is going to get a hat block that says when I receive lost. So this is like a hat block like when space key is pressed, but the user never even sees it. It's a way for the sprites themselves to quote-unquote communicate to each other, so that the ball is checking to see when the ball touches lava. When that ball touches lava, it's going to send a broadcast or a message over to text, and text is listening for that. So when I receive lost, it's going to switch its costume to costume 3. What sort of costume name is that? Let's switch these costume names to win, won, lost, play again. And that's exactly why we do this. I couldn't remember which one the lost costume was. So you're going to switch costume to lost. You're going to make it viewable by setting it to show. You're going to wait maybe 2 seconds. So it'll pop up there and say you lost for 2 seconds. And then you're going to switch the costume to play again. And now the user is prompted, hey, do you want to play again? And if the user does, and you can see what that looks like. So it says you lost, press spacebar to play again. Maybe we'll make it wait for 3 seconds. Press spacebar, I press spacebar and it disappears and the game restarts. Pretty cool, right? All right, again, so the way I did that, and you guys can look at you can either look at my screen or your screens now. I went in under ball. If the ball is touching lava, it's going to broadcast out a message, and that's under control. It's going to broadcast out a message that I created by clicking that from that drop down. I created new, and that broadcast is called lost. And it actually, the text doesn't matter. I could have named it AAA, which is a special kind of lava. Maybe AA, it's a special kind of lava. Okay? Before stop that script. So if it's touching the lava, it's going to send out a message to text, and then this whole script is going to stop. Raise your hand if you can hear me right now. Raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay. Thank you, guys. Sorry, Kate. So once that message gets sent out, my text sprite is going to receive it. So when I receive lost, right now this sprite is hidden. It's a whole sprite. It's hidden. It's going to switch the costume to lost. It's going to show for 3 seconds, and then it's going to prompt the user to play again. And when the user hits the spacebar to play again, it's going to disappear. So you could really easily strange, Kate, I don't know. So you could very easily add when I receive one. Right, I have these 3 costumes here, and I got those by painting new costumes with the different text. And that would be something along the lines of, with the ball, checking how big the score was, right? I'm not going to get into that tonight because it's throwing another wrench into it. We can get into that Monday. For right now, I want to make sure everyone files and saves their projects. And I'm going to answer any questions that you have. I'm going to save this project as Pong 8 p.m. Brianna, if your ball says, oh, you know what we forgot to do, Brianna? I am so glad you brought that up. So the ball is just going to stay in this corner because we always tell it to go in the same direction. What we need to do is have it add some fun to the game. Brianna, I am so glad you brought that up. Everybody, eyes on my screen. Under operators, you can create a new number with the pick random block. So when the game starts, instead of having it always point in the exact same direction, we're going to have it start by pointing out to the right and then rotating a random number between 80 and negative 80. So if you guys look at my screen, that's like pointing from here to here. So still facing upwards, anywhere kind of upwards here. So that way it doesn't directly go towards the lava. So from negative 80 to 80. Right, so straight up and down, we're pointing, not straight up and down, straight up, pointing straight up is 0. So from here, oh, that's my bad there. We want to point in direction straight up at the start of the game and go anywhere from 80 to negative 80. And then, oops, same thing for when it touches the paddle. Instead of when it hits the paddle every time it points straight up and rotates a little bit to the right, you want it to point straight up and point in any direction between 80 and negative 80. So point in direction straight up and then rotate either left or right from negative 80, which is rotating to the left, or 80, which is rotating to the right. So any number between negative 80 and 80. If it points 30, it'll look like this. Right, if it points up 30 and then rotates to the right by 30, it'll end up looking kind of pointing up in this direction. Any questions on this? I know we went through that pretty quickly. It does. It adds a lot more fun to your game. Unless this happens, in which case you just got to start over. And then if I hit the floor, it says, hey, you lost. Press spacebar to play again. I do want to play again, and it lets me play again. Pretty cool stuff. Any questions? Go ahead now. If you don't have any questions, you can absolutely change things, like give yourself a more exciting backdrop. You can try to add code for the score. On Monday, we're going to add mods for things like having the speed increase every time the ball touches the paddle, or have the ball shrink in size every time the ball touches the paddle. Things to make the game more difficult as you continue on. I have no questions though. So guys, try out different things. Give yourself a cooler looking graphic. If you need a refresher on that, you hit stage, backgrounds, then you can paint that background. I kind of got into my cloud background there. Sorry, guys. So you kind of dazed out there. I don't see any questions. How do you get your winner? So I said we'd go through that on Monday, Brianna, but the basic idea is that you need to use a new kind of block. So that the ball is checking, because we kind of have all the checks in the ball. We want to keep them there. If and I'm using one of these operator blocks that has a greater than sign. So you're checking to see if your variable score hits a certain point. So if it's greater than, let's say, 4, so that means you have to get to the score of 5, right? Because 4 is not greater than 4, but 5 is greater than 4. So, so if your score is greater than 5, you would broadcast 1. And again, guys, we're going to do this on Monday as a group, but I think Brianna just want to check this out, which I always, am 4. So if your score is greater than 4, broadcast 1, and you could check that there. Then, of course, your text. I can just right-click and duplicate this whole series. So when I receive 1, switch costume to 1, and it's the same thing. Oh, you do want to stop the script once you won, though. So I'm going to say that you can get, once you get score 2, you won. Because I'm lazy and I don't want to go all the way up to 5. Once you get score 3, you've won. So let's see if that works for me, Brianna. And I'm actually going to stay on a few minutes after 8 since I didn't get on until about 8:03. So if anyone needs to sign off, they can. But if anyone has any more questions, please feel free to stay on. So you're a winner. Press spacebar to play again. And it starts you over. All right, any other questions? Brianna, did that answer your question? Do you want to see any parts of my code? No? Make sure you guys are saving, or else you'll be very sad. Okay, great. Well, if that's the case, have a wonderful evening. This will be posted soon, and I will talk to you guys on Monday. Enjoy your snow day.